Okay, hi everyone. Welcome to another episode of Sci-Fi. Happy Friday, or whatever it is. Sorry, we had a holiday, so we weren't here the last couple of weeks. Elliot, how have you been? You've been on holiday yourself, haven't you, Elliot?
I have been.
Where were you? Amsterdam.
I was in Amsterdam and I was in Paris for the first time, seeing both those cities. So
First time? Oh, fantastic. What did you like it?
Yeah, I got a break from saving souls through the power of psychotherapy.
And also, I was like in Belfast, a little break. We've had a break, so we weren't on, but we are back on. So thanks, guys, for listening again. And we're like extremely happy to, I suppose, in a sense, a sort of double episode, a Sublation magazine show and sci-fi episode, because we're here with Dorotea Pospihalj. Am I saying that right? How do you say your surname?
Yes, it's Pospihalj.
Did I get it right?
Fairly good.
I often get criticized in the comments for being like unwoke, for having like pronounced people's surnames wrong and like their sort of genders and nationalities wrong as well, which is, I suppose, fair from a woke perspective. Anyway, delighted to be here with Dorotea Pospihalj, who's not only like a guest we really want to have on and talk about sort of the relationship between. I mean, Dorotea works on. She's part of the Red Clinic. We had Ian Parker and Christian Dunker on a couple of weeks or months ago. But also part of the Slovene school. She's coming to us from Ljubljana today to talk about, a lot of things. I mean, the question of sort of Slovene politics right now, which has become really attached to psychoanalysis. So one of the people running for president of Slovenia is a controversial psychoanalytic figure, Nina Krajnik. So it's somewhere that's kind of like... obviously, Slovenia has long had a history of psychoanalysis and politics since and before Zizek, but now there's kind of something going on in Slovene politics which we should talk about and think about. But she's also working on digital media and culture and the question of psychoanalysis as a tool for thinking about those things. So great to have you with us, Dorotea. And on top of that, you've got an article out in the magazine right now. In the link, people can read it about the question of communism and psychoanalysis and so on. So tell us like your story, first of all, Dorotea, like what are you and what has gone on in Slovenia?
The story, starting with what are you? This is a good start.
Yeah, what are you?
Good interview question.
And in the context of Slovenia, like what is going on and how did you come out of that as well?
Yes, well, thank you for that opening, Alfie. And I don't think I can answer to the question what or who am I, but I lived in UK in London for a long time and recently only returned to Slovenia with the possibly ambition to do a PhD here. So I came into quite a situation. First we had the parliamentary elections where I also ran actually for the member of parliament. Yes, I did. Right. As this left-wing party, Levica. That has been going quite strong. But
is that the one Zizek wrote a letter in support to and said?
Yeah. We actually had a few talks organized with and alongside with Zizek, saying his, critique and support and so on. But recently Nina Krajnik, which you Krajnik actually is pronounced, which you've mentioned, a self-proclaimed psychoanalyst or the only Lacanian in the Balkan field, let's say. She kind of came out with this, kind of, I will help to heal Slovenia. And I think she kind of, her thing was, my politics is the politics of a singular, which of course, if you're not a Lacanian, is hard to kind of grasp, especially for, normal people. And that she's going to heal Slovenia one by one, meaning, attending to each issue as she goes along. Quite
a rhetoric, isn't it? The idea of a therapist coming to politics and saying, I mean, I guess it wouldn't work in a country like Britain or like in a city like, Ljubljana, I think off the top of my head has about like 290,000 inhabitants or whatever, and Slovenia has like 2.1 million or something. So like, I guess you can sell this story in a different way in a place like this. Like, I'm going to be the figurehead of something that looks after you one by one in this kind of individual way, right? But also, so there's that question like about the size of him, but there's also like maybe this history of Nina Krajnik or whatever. Like, so if correct me if I'm wrong, but like she was a student maybe of like Mladen Dolar and Ljubljana School, like the Zizek guys, and then she decided that like theoretical psychoanalysis was bullshit and clinical psychoanalysis was being sort of ruined by these theoreticians who were using it as a rhetorical tool, right? And so she wrote like, if I'm right, I might be like making this up, so you correct me, but I think she wrote like some letters like really slamming the Slovene school of theory and psychoanalysis, right? And saying that clinical psychoanalysis, is the only real form, and all this theory politics stuff is bullshit. And that's like her history, and she sort of made her career. I mean, she looks great. Like, there's no getting around that. Like, a combination of looking great and saying controversial things about something that's popular in Ljubljana, right? But now she seems to be doing the absolute opposite. Like, she's precisely using psychoanalysis as an ideological tool, not as a clinical practice. So anyway, that's my thoughts. But what's going on with all that? Like,
yeah, I think that's a really, really good point, because and I do have to say that I am a fan of contradictions, and I do that often myself. So I wouldn't say that that's a problem in itself to argue for different things. But the question here is precisely this instrumentalization maybe of different different tools and different ideas that you then use into for your own sort of purposes. Let's not mention that I think it is problematic to mix politics and psychoanalysis, although that is something that we are also doing, but from a different perspective in the Red Clinic, isn't it? So how do you speak, or how can psychoanalysis speak about politics without really politicizing the psychoanalysis, the actual psychoanalysis, or vice versa, because what she's doing, I think, is problematic precisely from this point, that she is psychoanalyzing or trying to heal Slovenia. Does Slovenia need healing? Is that something that, is actually a thing? I mean, I don't know, but maybe she's right at the same time. I don't know. So that's...
great. I mean, so let's go from that. Let's sort of round this discussion of like Slovenian politics off and go into your to sort of you feel that you're seeing psychoanalysis take a hold in Slovenian politics in a certain way and be used in certain ways. And at this point, insofar as that goes, you agree. You're also trying to politicize psychoanalysis, let's say, as Nina Krajnik is, and you can see that from her example, which is an example you don't agree with, that this is actually happening. The psychoanalysis is becoming politicized. So why don't you tell us like how you would like to see psychoanalysis become politicized instead of what we're seeing here with this pattern in Slovenia right now?
Yeah, well, that's an excellent question, and of course we don't have an answer to that, but I would like to think that at least what we are attempting to do in Red Clinic is precisely to open up the space without antagonizing perhaps different approaches or different views, or, we're not all declared communists, we're not all Lacanians, we're not all even psychotherapists or psychoanalysts. And precisely by allowing to some extent, a multiplicity and a dialogue to exist, we might, through different possible failures, get somewhere else. But I'm not sure that this is precisely what is the.
So what is the Red Clinic, and what is the Red Clinic, and why are you part of it?
Well, when I found out that the Red Clinic is being formed a year ago in London, I kind of had to be part of it, because it just sounded like not too many other things are as impossible as something like that, something to play and try to integrate communist ideas or communist way of thinking, whatever that might be for different people. And again, here I have to stress that, what is actually communist in the Red Clinic is up to interpretation of each individual one by one that actually joins the clinic. And we're not trying to profess some particular way of working or thinking. So ideally, what I would like to see is for all of us to think and interpret this clinic. As, Lacan would maybe talk about interpreting the school or interpreting the psychoanalytic field as you, as a member of it.
I mean, I think Eliot has a question, but let me just have one quick comment, Eliot, on the back of what, and then I'll pass over to you. But like, one of the things I wanted to really expand on in this interview, I guess, is that this question of communism. I mean, it's something we've been sort of discussing. I was talking with a couple of other people, Jodie Dean and Alex Tekwangli. There were interviews that we did with those guys just recently, all grappling with this concept of communism. So I found it really interesting to read your article, which people can read in Salvation magazine, about like why a communist clinic, like why this signifier communism, as opposed to sort of socialism or whatever other signifiers you might choose. Like why communism and what to defend about the signifier communism. Obviously, I've got my own sort of feelings on that, but like, can you say like why you wanted to write this article about defending the idea of a communist clinic and why communism in particular is something you wanted to sort of push as a signifier or as an idea, right?
Yes, exactly. It's not just a signifier. It's much more than that, isn't it? And where socialism, for example, or at least how I understand it, and we might have completely different views on that, but socialism is a field that is more strongly linked to economic organization of our society, or whatever you want. But communist is an idea. And as Zizek actually he wrote this article recently about communist desire, which he then interprets into the book by, Bini Adamczak. Yesterday's Tomorrow is called the book. And it's a really, really lovely book. It's like a historical account of communism and the failures of communism and the solitude of different communist, specters in the Marxian sense.
Right.
I would really also, take on that as a point of view, which I think is definitely why I think communism is it's a stronger and more, just a more, I wouldn't say right, but it certainly has more. It holds more potential for failure, of course, as well.
I mean, I've recently also been having these kind of conversations. I totally agree. I'm just trying to sort of, I mean, Alex Tekwangli, he's brilliant. I mean, he sort of puts it in exactly the same terms as you, which is kind of interesting. Like when I was like asking about the difference between communism and socialism, he was saying, well, communism is a spectre, in the Marxist sense, so it's like we need to sort of pursue. But sorry, I know there's obviously a challenge. Are you communist or not? Do you like Zizek?
This is what Peterson warned about.
He did. I'm just sorting out.
By kindergarten, they must all be communists.
No, but this point was actually kind of something. I mean, like that. I mean, Alex's kind of point was, and I totally find it so convincing. Like the reason we need socialism and communism is because socialism in our day, it refers to sort of like the daily grind of like getting Corbyn elected instead of Keir Starmer, or like the DSA in the US. Like this is socialism. Verso Books is socialism, and Jacobin and Novara Media is socialism. But what's missing there is communism. An actual kind of spectre or idea of what a non-capitalist society should be. So it's almost like socialism is a tactic that some communists want to use to get to communism. Yeah.
Excellent. Yeah, that's quite how I would put it. It's a tactic and a means towards something, but it's not an end in itself. I don't know what the end in itself would be, but certainly if we think of communisms in plural and as a spectre, certainly we can see that some of it is always already existing in some ways, and I think what is useful here, and I think I'll develop this further in this direction, which is through kind of quantum physics principle and the superposition, meaning obviously that certain ideas or certain matters or whatever it is exists, in multiple dimensions.
This is already the communist clinic, maybe.
In some places, we are located in the world, which is kind of the idea that we share different ideas, different perspectives, and different testimonies of practitioners all over the world. And, you learn so much from how, human mind is viewed in India or, in all these different places that are not, or perhaps less Western in that sense.
Yeah. No, I think that's a good answer. Of course, it's a really interesting article that you've done on this communist clinic thing, which people should read. But okay, so Eliot, have you some questions off the back of that? Or
I have so many thoughts about the communist clinic idea. The first book I wrote for Zero was trying to apply Zizek to psychotherapy, and what exactly a red clinic would look like. What does it look like in the U.S. in the non-profit system, right? In terms of, is it workers organizing, therapists organizing? Is it a method? Is it a certain knowledge, an inadequate knowledge that we try to impart to somebody? And when I heard you say, all methods are of course available to people, and my internal kind of authoritarian personal dream was like, you can be anything you want, you can use any approach you want, but we will all be dogmatic Lacanians to some extent. But officially you can have any approach, but it's really secretly like a dogmatic communist Lacanian attempt to do something, right? that would be I'm sure, like, of course, someone who didn't hear of it and volunteering would be like allowed. But I think there is a question, because I've definitely attempted to set up a practice which is a more socialist practice or a unionized or a co-op practice. And the thing that I ran into, which is this idea of what exactly is a red clinic, right? And one of the issues in terms of one of the ways where people were on board with this idea, because we're trying to unionize, we're getting a lot of pushback. The labor board is finding in our favor that, the clinic, which is nonprofit funded, is breaking the law. And we're like, we're going to start our own clinic. And then it's like, okay, let's form a unionized or co-op clinic. And then they say, okay, so we're going to bring in our clients. And I say, okay, so we'll have a client pool. And it's like, no, we'll each bring in our own clients, and we'll each get the money from the client. I'm like, wait, this is just sharing an office. So the idea of a communist clinic can easily dissolve so easily. And I've experienced so many forms of this dream of the red clinic, of the unionized clinic, of the militantly unionized therapist, of the co-op therapist, right? Of even the method itself is another specter, right? What is a red? What is communist therapy?
Therapy.
Right? And in terms of, is maybe at this point we can just substitute Lacanian, which would be nice. But yeah, in terms of it, at this point, there is a red clinic. So no, I'm getting there. So I think it's important to recognize the multiplicity of this dream of some sort of like socialist psychotherapy. And it's already a kind of negative specter in the conservative mind. Oh, psychotherapists are socialists because they do and insert every kind of like centrist liberal thing in psychotherapy, right? So there is a red clinic.
There is a red clinic.
How many therapists are involved with the red clinic? Maybe that would be a good place to start.
Well, you can, you can check out our website. I think, are there any links to that? But yeah,
we've this is not the first plugging of the red clinic we've done. Yeah, so people probably know.
Yeah. At the minute, we are. I don't want to. I think it's around 7 of us globally working at the Red Clinic.
Right. So what does the Red Clinic do? So there's 7 therapists which are attached to the signifier of the Red Clinic. This is a really good start. I think that's a really good start. Are there patients? I mean, just in terms of things fall apart quite easily when Alfie's laughing, but things can fall apart way before that stage, you know.
Absolutely.
Is any client being seen under the guise of this Red Clinic idea? Is it just a kind of think tank at this point?
That is affirmative, Elliot. We are seeing actively clients or patients or people that come to support. We are also a think tank, and we do things like, you know, group debates, group supervision. We are thinking, writing, and reading together. So that's the idea, that we sort of become like an entity that develops in all these different weird directions. We don't really know exactly which one that will be, but through series, as I said before, of some kind of failures and repetitions of that, I imagine something will develop. And like you say, yeah, absolutely. And so many of these dreams did fall apart and then needed to be consequently reconstructed.
Group supervision is another point in the valid direction for me. That's like, oh, wow, you even do group supervision. This is like a proper clinic. Okay. So sorry, one more question in terms of how is it funded? Is it just is it the clients? Are there separate donations? Is it like institutions? Like, who funds the Red Clinic?
Clinic is at the minute self-funded, or, you know, we have
free labor, this thing.
Huh?
Free labor.
Free labor, yeah, absolutely.
Is it?
But, well, how we organize things is, or there is a principle that, you know, you pay for the session in any means that you have. Right. And the idea is also to, you know, have free sessions if that's the case. And now there's a whole debate also about the money and the signifier of money for the therapy, and should therapy be free, or, you know, even if you pay $5 or £5, should that be kind of some kind of limit there in terms of value exchange? So it brings a lot of questions.
I'm definitely not against doing things for free.
Yeah, right. As you, and so people should follow the Patreon and pay Eliot.
There you go.
But no, I mean, I get why you want to ask about this stuff, Eliot, because you're obviously as a practicing psychotherapist, you're interested in how this stuff works, what it formally does. But I also want to like sort of make sure this is like we think about this in terms of like politics and how it's going on and stuff like that. I mean, it is kind of. I
think that's important. That's
it is important. But I mean, Dorotea, I wanted to ask about like your article itself in Summation magazine, you know, where you kind of argue for a sort of movement from there's a movement from post-politics to what you're saying is anti-politics, right? And you get into sort of talking about how with Macron, with Boris, there's a new kind of, let's say, discourse in the political in the sort of political media world, right, where these politicians try to sort of combine left and right in a certain way, and as you put it, like, and it's anti-politics, right? So like, you know, you get your Brexit in name only, which I hadn't actually heard this like Brino thing, Brexit in name only, you know, but which is essentially saying like Brexit as a signifier, but not as economic change or whatever. And then, you know, you're also talking about Macron in France and how it sort of tries to sort of, it tries to trick both the left and the right in the same way to agree with it in a different way, sort of agree with a certain kind of liberal politics and so on. So, you know, give us that argument, like, and say why you wanted to, why did you decide to contextualize what's going on in politics of Macron and Johnson in relation to psychoanalysis? I guess that's my question.
Yeah. Well, I think, you know, I think it's happening all over, isn't it? There isn't that distinction anymore between a left politics or a right politics or any kind of politics, actually politicians themselves who are disavowing politics. So I don't know whether that is in a way a symptom or a result of a much deeper issue that is within the discourse itself, within our social understanding of what might be from fake news to kind of proliferation of all these different sources of information that effectively discourse itself to some extent is alienated. It's not like we are alienated as a result of this society, but the society itself that is producing these kind of very antagonistic, but in a very alienatory way, processes that politics itself is very, very confused, if that makes sense. But I'm not really set on that. I think that I might actually change my mind eventually, but I really think that there is something there, that there's something happening with the actual symbolic field. Now we kind of just identify with anything or with nothing, or just change identities or change our whatever it is.
Well, that's very psychoanalytic. The inability of knowledge, the insufficiency. Like politics is all about mastery. Zizek wants a new master, but then the problem is you can't really master. Which is like, wouldn't it be nice to have a technocratic master? Everyone wants to be. Italy has the technocratic master who's getting outed.
Not anymore,
right.
Is it? Yeah, so clearly it doesn't work. And politics is full of this saturation, I guess, of these different processes that are no longer really in any way connecting to what is the actual reality of things, isn't it? Like you said before, Brexit is not really Brexit in any way significant.
So I mean, maybe this connects things up with what we were saying about Nina Krajnik at the beginning. Like, do you think that like what we're dealing with globally in this politics is like quite a separation between this sort of signifiers that are used, the things that influence voting, the things that influence political positions operate on the one level, and then they are disconnected from the things which are in fact material. And I suppose as a follow-up to that, like what is the role of psychoanalysis in that? Like, why psychoanalysis rather than materialism, let's say? I mean, and this is also a question for me and you and Eliot, like, why are we here doing a show about psychoanalysis instead of a Marxist materialist show or whatever? Like, how do we think that psychoanalysis is helping?
Yeah. Well, the short circuit, right, in terms of what dialectical materialism ideally short circuits the capitalist mode of production from reproducing itself. So I think there's a question of how do you stop the ruling class mode of reproducing itself. And I think even with right-wing populist ideas like Brexit is a bit of a right-wing populist idea, right? This is like we might even be glad that the capitalist mode of production overcomes and we don't really have Brexit, and you can't be too much of a fascist, right? So this is like the neoliberal capitalists, they'll stop. Right, but ultimately this kind of leads to the impasse, right? Which is psychoanalysis. Yeah.
I mean, look, this is what I really want to get into, really, with you, Dorotea. Like, is psychoanalysis of the left? Should it be of the left? Like, is it actually right? Like, one of my greatest fears about psychoanalysis and its like trajectory is that it's basically become woke. Sort of woke liberal psychoanalysis, and I think that I'm always so surprised, like surely as a therapist, you're a practicing psychoanalyst, surely like the people that come to you are like conservative war veterans, or they could be anxious older Jewish Americans, or they could be like working class guys from a factory. The whole concept of the Red Clinic is based on the idea that like everyone can be part of this discourse, right?
Yeah.
But at the same time, like psychoanalysis as a genre, as a theoretical discourse, I mean, maybe this is where Nina Krajnik has a point, like, but like it has become so sort of woke, liberal, like, you know,
Has it?
it has to be black feminist psychoanalysis, or you know, but what about like your right wing people who like really don't want to like believe in feminism or something, but still need analysis? And like, how does the Red Clinic? This is my suspicion of the Red Clinic. It's a great idea, but only the wokes are going there. So how do you reach the people who don't want to be part of that world, but actually are the ones who most need a Red Clinic? Right.
Well, that's precisely the first and initial idea of the Red Clinic, that we don't bring politics in that sense into the clinical space. So for me, you know, if you're a homophobic Jew that lives, I don't know, somewhere that has no connection whatsoever I've ever heard of anything such as psychoanalysis or Marxism or any of those things, is equally able to be in the space and think and talk about his experience. So we're not in any way
a homophobic Jew or an anti-Semitic gay.
Yes, exactly.
Right. I mean, bring them all in. Like, everyone's welcome here, of course.
Yeah, there you go. Whatever your
I mean, you know,
problematic.
I actually met Dorotea through quite a friend, a common friend of ours, you know, who's really interested in psychoanalysis, but also didn't really sort of meet the criteria, let's say, for being in the discourse of psychoanalysis. And, you know, like, he would be another example, Dorotea, of someone who, like, how does the Red Clinic, for example, help someone like that person that we both know who I'm talking about, you know?
Right, or their opposite, or their categorical opposite.
Like,
one must imagine a clean-shaven Marx, a homophobic Jew, and a anti-Semitic gay person, or something.
We need to always go into extremes, otherwise it just doesn't make sense, does it? But well, I think, you know, yeah, to get back to entering the discourse, well, I think, you know, what communism and the clinic as such, or psychoanalysis as a practice, have in common is this impossibility in itself. So, you know, one, psychoanalysis or psychotherapy or any of those processes are not going to save the world, or are not going to, you know, in any way heal our predicaments in a significant way. And equally, communist or communist idea is always has its counter-revolution implicated in its very conception of the idea, isn't it? So, you know.
Yeah.
Well, there was a Red Clinic. You know, I'm reminded of just
Red
now is
therapy.
Well, there's Sabrina Spielman, right? The Jung patient. Zizek brought this up a long time ago when I convinced the guy at USC to give me the mic. I was in the audience and I did one of these to him.
Oh, I mean, it's interesting you should say that.
But there was a Freudian kindergarten in the USSR founded by Sabrina Spielman, right? So there has been Red Clinics in the past. It's like there's this ambiguity of what it consists of, right?
I was just going to say exactly as you say, Elliot. I mean, there's actually a thing. I don't know if you I'm sure you have, Dorotea, because Dan Bristow actually sent it to me. He's part of the Red Clinic thing with you. Like there was a journal called Red Therapy, which was a kind of feminist. It was weird. It's a sort of almost like a sort of community self-help newspaper called Red Therapy that was circulated in the 70s, and it's got some pretty interesting things. I mean, there's a lot of proto-woke stuff in there, but like there was an idea of Red Therapy that's got a long history. So, you know, you presumably chose this name Red Clinic to sort of tap into what's been quite a long history, as Eliot said, since Freud, really, of trying to do this.
Yeah, I mean, and again, as I mentioned also in the article, just read the article and, you know, we can kind of wrap it up here. But yeah, I mean, the idea itself is not new. It's not revolutionary in any way. We are just reinterpreting and reattempting to do something that was done a million times. So, you know, it's not really any special kind of science.
But it is an important idea, though. I mean, the things that do have power, right, are not necessarily red clinics, are not necessarily like highly educated people wanting to do things for a social good, but the things that do have institutional power is, are capitalist kind of modes of production of psychotherapy.
Oh yeah,
from the UK.
I agree with Elliot. I'm absolutely not saying it's not new and therefore it's less good.
Well, it is important. I always want to say this because we have humble people sometimes, all the time really. People are like, oh, but maybe it's not that good. But it's like, no, it's a great idea. The Red Clinic's a great idea. And the fact of the matter is it could use more presence in the world because, in the UK you have NHS funded cognitive therapy for 4 sessions. In the US you have neoliberal. I'm trying to do a sobriety neoliberal. I'm trying not to say neoliberal anymore because it's too easy.
Right. What are you trying to say?
I'm trying to say, well, nonprofit funded by the state and private interests, which, that is pretty neoliberal, but I'm trying not to say it anyway. But nonprofits, which are funded by a combination of the state and of private donations as well. These clinics, Bezos has a clinic, which is also state funded in Los Angeles. It's actually a better clinic, Jeff Bezos's clinic, because it's so highly funded. He only has one of them, I think, and people, they just hand things out to people. So like people who work in like some of these clinics, they would like to work in the Bezos clinic, but this is not to say that what should we have? Bezos should just highly fund. And it's like no, you need this idea of the Red Clinic socially conscious,
right. I mean,
giving psychotherapy, giving meaningful help to people outside of and you don't have to reproduce the capitalist mode of production to give that to people. So this is important.
I agree, but this is not the shopping channel. Like, we're not trying to sell this product. Like,
I'm trying to sell this product. You're not. I'm trying to imbibe. Well, it's not the shop. Well, I have the hat. This is the Wizard channel. I'm trying to imbue power into the institution with my wizard hat.
No, none of that. So your hat looks amazing, though. You do it great. No. But let's talk about hyperpolitics. One of the, I really love Dorotea. It was really great to see you talk about Anton Jaeger's points. I love Anton. I think he's a great commentator on like politics today and so on. So part of your article is about hyperspeed and hyperpolitics. Like, this is a really interesting kind of take. And obviously. I'm also interested in Sloterdijk. Yeah, we should do more on Sloterdijk, Elliot. But tell us like what your understanding of hyperpolitics is and why you want to say that, why you want to use this word.
I don't know if I ever used that word, but sure. I mean, I don't think I've did I?
I think in your article, but I mean, it's really the point about sort of in the capitalism and anti-capitalism, talking about like sort of, I mean, these are the question of, I mean, I suppose, as you say, as Jodie Dean talks about it, like, how do you think like anti-communism is kind of sort of, anti-communism is kind of exploded as a thing. I mean, we saw it in the UK with like there were these weird pictures of like Jeremy Corbyn with a sort of Russian hat on the BBC. How does anti-communism kind of like plug into this stuff? Because what we've talked about communism and why you think that's the right way to go, but what about like this kind of you're identifying a kind of movement against that, like a kind of European anti-communism, I guess.
Well, I think, anti-communism is a global phenomenon in a way. It's been since forever, and it kind of goes into that direction of, capitalist way of producing, capitalist way of thinking and organizing the society. So, of course, why would you want to allow a different idea to be present? Why would you want,
So, but like there's, right. But I mean, and I suppose in a sense, there's been a long, obviously since sort of the US sort of, what do you call that? McCarthyism, is that what they call it? There's been a long history of, anti-communism. But at the same time, like
Korea as well, they executed South Korean communists in the 50s, right?
Yeah, it seems to have really intensified, I suppose. Like, and that goes back to
Why
what
is it intensifying, which is probably a very, very on point and interesting question. Why is there this speed to which this discourse is developing? Why would you think suddenly, well, there is no threat of communism, or at least I don't see any, communists trying to, take over the power and so on. So why this very, very violent discourse that's been...
exactly, yeah. I think it's a great thing to sort of ask, and I mean, and I mean, one of your part, I don't know if actually how this is in the actual article, but you say psychoanalysis of the left and the right, so I mean, I think this is exactly this. Like, how do we sort of, I don't know, I guess my question is like the Slovene school, right? They've been responsible for a connection between psychoanalysis and Marxism. I think we can say that for sure, really. I mean, like, because a lot of traditional Marxists are kind of anti-psychoanalytic, right? But like, because of the Slovene school, there is a movement to unite psychoanalysis and Marxism, and this is also something I find very compelling, and I agree that there's a great sort of value in this. But now, looking at that from a different way, like politically now, like, and this is the Nina Krajnik thing again. Like the question of the right, is psychoanalysis on the left or the right? It's not as easy a question as it should be, and you're obviously like, so I suppose your article's maybe hinting that we're about to see a right psychoanalysis emerge. Would that be too much to say?
Yeah. Let's see which way it goes. But I mean, psychoanalysis as such, as a practice, as theory, as all of those things, is just a practice. It's a way of viewing the world, and now it's also the subject himself or herself that interprets the world. So, yeah, of course. I mean, certainly, I would say that Nina Krajnik's discourse and how she actually, started this whole divide, and there's the right psychoanalysis and then the theoretical psychoanalysis is clearly wrong, and she was attacking Slovenian left as a political left for actually starting the whole privatization and all these processes that then eventually led us to where we are. So again, taking something from a different side or some side, using it as a negative, and then proposing something that should be a solution, which is not really what I think psychoanalysis is. So again, if a person that is more right-wing leaning or whatever comes to psychoanalysis, surely I'm not going to try to convince them that somehow, they're on the wrong side or...
No, right, but yeah.
Should I state the obvious and say it's who uses psychoanalysis? You can use psychoanalysis, you can use psychoanalysis in lots of ways. You can use socialism in a lot of ways. You could use anti-capitalism rhetorically as a right-wing person.
Yeah. But, I do have to say that, to some extent, I feel that psychoanalysis has been, to some extent, colonialized or colonized or taken by a certain discourse. And perhaps that's what you were hinting at before. It feels like psychoanalysis as a discourse needs to be decolonialized or disalienated.
What does that mean? That's a really interesting comment. I know we're running out of time, but what does it mean to say psychoanalysis should be decolonialized?
Well, I mean, to some extent, it was invented by white men that are privileged, and it is a very expensive talking cure. That's how it still is to some extent, right? I mean, there are very, very few options for individuals to enter psychoanalysis, psychotherapy, meaning, of course, long-term support, if they don't have sufficient or significant means to do so. So in that sense, I feel that it has been colonialized or utilized in a, only a certain way for a certain purpose. And, our friends and comrades in Palestine are doing a great job precisely at that on a political level, but equally, decolonializing the minds of people that has been literally colonized or, under the settler colonial regime.
Sure. Well, Israel is as a Jewish person, I find Israel really interesting because Jewish people we like to think of ourselves as always progressive. And it's really interesting to see the limits of progressive discourse. I saw a recent article, Leeds University is being sued because they wanted a Jewish student to critique Israel in a class, and they wouldn't critique Israel, right?
Yeah,
There's a limit to, and kind of going back to the Red Clinic and this kind of dream of what is a communist or socialist psychoanalysis, right? Which is when you do one of these practices, I'm glad that the Red Clinic's an international kind of phenomenon because, you can, of course, say, it's progressive in the UK to not be anti-Semitic and not makes a Jewish person write a polemic on Israel. But then, of course, you have to kind of challenge it. It's like, I always saw Israel as kind of this anti-Semitic project in itself. It's like, let's get all these Jews out of Europe, right? Like any means possible. Let's get these Jews out of Europe and into the Middle East, and we're good. Like that's the problem with Israel in the first place. It's originally like a anti-Semitic project, and here's this other, and now it's of course used in discourse as anti-Semitism, and everything becomes muddled because of the historical actuality and all these kind of contradictions. But anyway, you want to say something else?
I do, because I sort of object to this conversation sort of instinctively.
Right? Do you?
Because I mean, I really
got a bit tribal there for a second.
I really hate the idea of psychoanalysis and decolonization because I think it's ideology. I mean, you can't use the idea that psychoanalysis is going to decolonize minds. I mean, to me, this is I might as well be honest. It's only a podcast. I might even put this in, but that is ideology. I mean, you don't decolonize minds. That's like woke discourse to its extreme. Like, you don't coach people what to think. Right? I'm going to release you from your chains of empire and allow you to sort of free your mind from the whole idea of decolonizing minds is a new form of colonization where basically a kind of liberal Western wokeness teaches people, actually, we can free you from your current structure of traditionalism, which is, marked by the scars of empire, and allow you to now welcome you into the future of woke liberalism. I just think the idea of psychoanalysis as decolonial is really offensive. Really, I feel really repulsed by that concept.
Well, it's not psychoanalysis that's going to do that. Psychoanalysis is potentially one of the tools that we can use by the people, for the people. I mean, people are the site of any change if there ever will be one. Now, they can be psychoanalysts or they can be, engineers or whatever. So it's not really about psychoanalysis as such, but it can
maybe we need decolonial we talked to a guy who wrote decolonial psychoanalysis.
But I thought he was. I didn't think he. I mean, Robert was. I think Robert's arguments are pretty good.
Maybe,
but they are not arguing what Dorotea said. They're not arguing that psychoanalysis can decolonize the minds.
Right.
He was arguing rather that the political concepts of psychoanalysis have a kind of connection with post-colonialism and so on, which I don't think I agree with that, but I can see the argument. But I definitely think there's a risk in appointing yourselves decolonializers. I think that's the thing. Like, who gets to decolonize? And what
Alfie, I hate to end the session.
I know you have to.
I have to go in literally 30 seconds.
Yeah. Okay. So
we will continue that.
You can go. We will carry on, and I can edit.
All right. Sounds good. So long. Now you can make the Jewish jokes and say, oh, no, I'm just kidding.
Yeah, bloody Israel.
Sorry to use the Jewish card. All right, bye.
No, that's okay. You get 1 point for that. But,
Yeah, I think
I'm not trying to be obtuse or awkward. I just think it's a big question. You can't just say I'm going to decolonize people. Like, you just can't say that. Like, decolonizing minds. Like, what does that mean?
Well, I think it's a more in terms of, provocation. And as I said before, there are certain antinomies at present also in what we do, we talk about many juxtapositions with the left and the right psychoanalysis.
Right. I mean, let's talk about that. Like, what is the right psychoanalysis?
Yeah, exactly. What is it?
Well, is there a right psychoanalysis? In your mind, is there a right-wing psychoanalysis?
Well, as we said before, I think that it certainly does depend on the individual. And I don't think that there is, psychoanalysis as such that is decolonializing or colonializing or left or right? I don't think that the theory or the nature of psychoanalysis as such can be defined. That's certainly not what I think can be said. But yeah, I think what is really important is to kind of push ourselves into these questions, which can be at times provocative, and it can be scary, and it can be quite, perhaps anxiety provoking, but only as a way of stretching yourself, maybe,
Yeah. And so what I mean, I agree. I mean, and I feel like some of that like conversation was just a sort of struggle over this kind of like how to talk about these things. Like,
yes, precisely my point. Yeah, we don't know how to talk about it, and maybe always these kind of opposites and binary positions, binary logics, and kind of can become problematic and limiting themselves. So I think the whole idea is to expand this discourse.
Just a quick last. I mean, I definitely want to, before you go, ask you about your dating experiences on the apps, which is obviously a shared interest. But before we drop this topic of the Red Clinic, but just as a last point, don't you worry that by calling it a Red Clinic, you're basically alienating 2/3 of the working class who don't consider themselves red? Because you when you're saying it's a communist clinic, you're saying it's a clinic for the working class, but 2/3 of the working class are alienated by the word red. So why is it Red Clinic? And what does that actually mean if it's Red Clinic? I mean, that's my worry. Isn't what we need a red-brown clinic or a red-blue clinic? Isn't that what psychoanalysis can offer?
Maybe we need a rainbow clinic. I don't know, but I mean, precisely why is this neoliberal, let's say, or a capitalist way of thinking is that now we need to kind of think of an idea that is going to potentially be liked and speak to everybody, And I really hate that. I really hate this kind of, maybe I'm going to, offend this person, or maybe I'm going to say something that is not quite politically correct, or maybe I'm going to call my clinic in a way that's going to, alienate, as you say, a majority of people. I think, that's not at least to me, a great start when you think about ideas that are close to you. And I think at least how we started this project is coming together under a signifier, an idea, something that we kind of believe.
No, I mean, I'm tempted to sort of launch the blue clinic, I have to say. Or the brown clinic. Brown clinic would be good. I'm just sort of tempted to do that.
That would be certainly not offensive.
In a way, it's not unrelated, because I was one of the dating sites that I got into when I was exploring this concept for my novel / trying to find a new wife. I was a site called Red Yenta. So there's a new one that's launching called OK Comrade. So there's the dating sites also have a kind of logic of, okay, who's a red, who's a blue, who's a communist, who's a socialist, and so on. So you said you had some kind of comments to make on digital digital dating and social life and so on. So, how would you sort of situate those in relation to all this red blue stuff? Yeah.
Well, I mean, the same as you look for a partner, you look for a therapist to kind of create this relationship that is potentially healing. And, you want to find somebody that, you would feel understood by, right? So in that sense, I was thinking that a lot of what is happening to let's say, as an overarching mental health support and, all these therapeutic kind of help support are actually becoming very, very fast, very quickly, very digitalized. So, the perfect relationship where you interact via the app and your therapist is there, and it kind of feels that the whole therapeutic attempt or agenda has been to some extent again instrumentalized, and now they have all these kind of monitoring. It's called mood word cloud or something like that. So
yeah, I'm really interested in that. Yeah,
metrics are being kind of stored in this cloud and can be shared with potential, employers that might be interested in, like, for example, the services that this app is developing, so that they can see what is a general mood in the company. Of course, they say that all these are anonymized, so all the data that they collect of all these, like, psychometrics, you do little tests and you do little questionnaires and so on and so forth. And yeah, all of that is stored, all of that is collected, and then to some extent utilized to, I don't know, measure whatever it is that you want. So yeah, I don't know whether that is a good thing, or whether this collectivizing experience can also be digitalized. I mean, we're talking about collectivizing the experience in a sense of, what the Red Clinic is doing is like sharing internationally the ideas, the experience, and also testimonies of different individuals. But perhaps that is just another way of collectivizing that experience. And I don't have an opinion on that, in a sense that that is necessarily a bad thing. The fact that all these psychotherapeutically related
I mean, I think this is a brilliant. Sorry, go on.
yeah, so I kind of thought, well, that's kind of a sequel to what you were, developing with the dating apps. Like now is, dream world therapy, maybe, in a sense that,
I mean, it's a huge thing it's a huge thing already in the world of tech and predictive technology. The question of therapy. I mean, obviously we've seen it in the news with, like, you can get a sort of AI therapist and so on. But really, a lot on a much more abstract level, a lot of what technologies are developing are basically designed to replace the role of therapists in life or whatever. So even in a smaller scale, even something like Deliveroo or Pokemon Go can, in a certain sense, be seen as a sort of outlet for things that would otherwise need to be thought through. So obviously the whole structure of Silicon Valley sort of self-help tech, Fitbits, Apple Watches, gamification of certain things, but also outsourced therapy and so on. And it's all sort of designed to sort of fill a gap that therapy would have otherwise been part of, I suppose, or talking would have otherwise been part of. So it's interesting to hear you sort of make those connections as a psychoanalyst yourself, and think about, like, well, how would this profession sort of go? Like, how will this go? Like, what is now the role of when Elon Musk can make a little bot that's basically you? What would you do?
Point? Yeah, exactly. And also by the ways of singularity, which soon we might all be connected and part of one big consciousness. So yeah. What's the point of talking therapy then? Anyway.
I guess. But obviously you feel it is extremely important. And you would.
I'm kind of thinking about it, and I'm thinking about what's the clinic for the end of the world, or end of what we're now experiencing as various ends. What is the role of psychoanalysis, or clinic?
I mean that's really the big question. I mean, to be honest, that's the question that Eliot and I wanted to answer with this podcast, but we haven't really ended up doing that. But the question of what we're clearly aware that we're living in, and this is my child, this is Lyra, this is Dorotea, she's in Slovenia. We were going to go there this year. She was going to come with me
as well.
She was going to come with me, but she can't because her passport's run out.
Oh no!
So we're waiting for a new passport for this little. So this is your old passport. You want to look at it? You can find your face. You look like a baby in there. She needs a new passport before she can travel.
What do they need this as a baby?
Well, no, it lasts 5 years, and then you need a new one.
5 years.
So, but we've got some good friends in Ljubljana, so we often go and stay for some time. But she needs a new passport before she can go. But I'll be there in August anyway. But I mean, this is the end of the chat. So I'll have to edit this out. There you are. She looks like a right little baby. Look at that, baby. That's not that. Look at that.
Baby. So tiny.
That's not the same person as that, is it?
You're so big now and completely different.
Yeah.
You have long hair. Yeah, so they were
a cool little sausage.
Yeah, I used to not be cool. Now I'm cool.
Oh, really? You used to not be cool? I used to not be cool too,
No, you're not.
I got cool when I was 31. When did you get cool?
About 5.
About 5?
4 or 5.
4 or 5?
Yeah.
All right.
When did you get cool, Dorotea?
Oh gosh, I don't think I'm still.
You are cool now, I think. Yeah.
We're all cool people, huh? What do you think?
Do you think she looks cool? She's got nice hair.
Look, I have a nice cat.
A cat? Oh my god, that is really nice. We've got a rabbit. You want to get it? You can get it if you want. It's a bit actually too far to carry up. It's a tell grandma to carry up.
Maybe next time.
We've got a rabbit that's pretty good. It's real fluffy.
Real fluffy rabbit.
Real fluffy rabbit, yeah.
I think it's something.
I mean, this shouldn't still be recording, really, but yeah. But I'll edit it to a certain extent. Oh, I might not. I mean, it's perfect.
No, you'll see. But yeah, I mean, there's so many questions that possibly won't get answered ever, or questions that will change.
I suppose that would be my last sort of question to hear what you think. I mean, you're around the age of Eliot and I. Do you think Slovenian psychoanalysis has got a future to look forward to, and there are battles to pick there, or do you think it's just kind of had its moment as politically influential? Or how do you sort of see that that future of I mean, it must have been different for you growing up in a place where those things are really taken seriously. In Ljubljana, I'm always struck by how the media and the newspapers and the TV also sort of show these kind of psychoanalytic people and discuss things with them, and that's really alien in the UK. I can't remember the last time in the UK that I saw a psychoanalyst on the TV, but in Slovenia there is this kind of connection between philosophy and psychoanalysis and media, and is there some hope in that, or do you think it's just screwed now?
Well, no, there is no hope, and that's probably one because our national TV was hijacked by the right media, so now they're changing the whole constellation of the programs and so on. That's one thing, and the second thing is psychoanalysis as a practice hasn't taken off, in a sense that people don't think psychoanalysis is something that they would necessarily want to do or use. But when it comes to theory, it's really the complete opposite. So there is this intersectionality. There are institutes that are really, really keen on developing, intersectional field of many different approaches. And, it's really, there's so much of this intellectual freedom in that sense.
Anyway, I feel like we should stop talking about this. But I mean, people should all read Dorotea's article in Sublation magazine, which is really kind of explaining this kind of communist concept of the communist clinic. And also it's about Slovenian politics and what's going on with this kind of extremely, I think it's really important. Anyone that's interested in psychoanalysis should be paying attention to like this question of like Nina Krajnik and what's going on in Slovene politics, like in what way can psychoanalysis intersect with politics? It's kind of being embodied in Slovenia at the moment. So thanks for talking to us about those kind of things, Dorotea. And people can just read in the bio the link to the Red Clinic, the link to Dorotea's article. And thanks for listening. Sorry about the rabbits, children, and other things, but they happen,